right? Assimilate to the other side, they lose who they are. But the most important part when you talk about building for is, controlling these things, because most police departments won't have the resources, what is going to happen now is they're going to create task force. And what the task force is going to look like is we'll go to Brother Trevor and say, look, I'm short-handed, your alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, tobacco. I want to create a task force because I have heavy crime in a particular area. So now what happens is you get a police officer from the city, police officer from state police, somebody from the feds, somebody from the county. Right there alone, when you mix that, there's multiple regulations and rules in which, in many cases, you might have a higher standard in one and a lower one in the other. So that creates the problem. The second you create a task force, and the reason why most police agencies are gonna say, yeah, create the task force, what most people don't realize is, if you create a task force that's federally funded, ATF is gonna give each police officer $17,500 over their salary, which covers overtime for the police department. So as the chief, I'm gonna go, I'm saving money because ATF and the feds are paying for it, which comes out of the taxpayers' dollars. Next thing that comes into effect when you create that, organized crime, RICO. Everybody in this room should know Cousin Rico. Because RICO is sending more black folk to jail for an extraordinary amount of time. So far as the New York State Police, I can't speak for them at this time, but again, shorthanded, they're gonna do what they need to do, ultimately is bring the number down, right? And the thing you have to remember, if you're looking for a headline, it's a real simple one when they tell you no one's gonna be impacted. Anything that's banned is contraband. Anything that's contraband is illegal. It is a police matter. And real simple, if you stop a car, as she was speaking about, and she sees a carton of cigarettes, a menthol cigarettes in the back of the car, you think the police officer is gonna say, I know that's contraband, but I'm not gonna do anything about it? Let America the FDA try to fool you on that. We know there's never been anything created by the federal government that's solely in the best interest of black folk and nobody else. So right there alone, everybody in this room should say, they really care about us? Not true. And again, and understand, it's black people that look like us that are creating it. But like Neil said, they're coming from a health perspective and they haven't taken the time to see a law enforcement perspective. And they darn sure haven't gone down as far as understanding how it's going to impact our black farmers around the country that are already being disadvantaged and taken, and not being treated fairly.
So Elliot, going back to what Mr. Bogle asked, the National Conference of Black Mayors just had a meeting in Washington, D.C. And so the proponents of the menthol ban went and interviewed a lot of the young new black mayors. And then they went on television, on all the networks, probably spent several $1 million promoting the ban. And I said to myself, wow, that mayor's not talking to his chief of police. That mayor's not talking to somebody who's gonna have to enforce what they're promoting. And I'm gonna call out the names. It was the mayor of Baltimore, the former mayor of Philadelphia, the mayor of Birmingham. And I know, and I'm not trying to undermine those mayors, I'm sure they were pulled to the corner and did a quick social media, not knowing it's gonna be part of a larger campaign. So I just think that those of us in the black press, it's just not about so much pointing fingers at somebody else. We have to look in our own mirrors and the mirrors of our communities and seeing how this is going to impact the quality of life. And we do need the facts. So Dr. Bailey and all of you, I think what you've said here, we have a transcript of this, Sheila. We're gonna make this video available to all the publishers. But I do think we should be doing something timely, because the White House is under a lot of pressure. I estimate by Super Tuesday, which is in March, they're gonna have a lot of pressure, but also, we're in the business of distributing information that also brings pressure. I think truth needs some pressure. I think accuracy needs some pressure. There's a lot of disinformation out there that has been funded and distributed, and unfortunately, even when some of our own leaders are misled or misinformed. I don't think any of the mayors I mentioned would want to do something to harm their constituents. And I'm sure they said what they said because for the information that was given to them. That's where we come in. We got to make sure, Sheila, that our municipal executives, our state legislative executives, and our federal representatives all know this information. Because, Bobby, I'm telling you, there's a lot of misinformation, Mr. Chair, about this issue out there. And it's unfortunate that we have a proclivity to act on misinformation and then a proclivity just to kind of be silent when there's something that may be controversial. And the thing that I really love about the black press, we have never avoided the controversy because it's more important for us to tell the truth and the story no matter how much controversy wakes up.
And Doc, just real quick, and Doc, Brandon Scott, Mayor of Baltimore, knows. I had a personal conversation with him a couple years ago. The whole Maryland legislature knows. So don't let him claim ignorance.
All right, Mr. Bogle had his hand. Mark? And I know we're over time. We can get this
very
question.
much so. I'm sorry to have to say that.
I don't want to hog this discussion.
No, it's okay.
With such distinguished people speaking. And I should tell you, I'm a menthol smoker. I'm down to 3 a day, but I've had 4 already today. That's what this conference will do for you. But how can you tell people to not stop smoking since we know that smoking is injurious to your health? So how are you going to tell them? How do you articulate that to your audience since it's a fact that smoking does kill you? And then you're going to say, oh, wait for a study? I mean, I need to know from the professionals, how do you articulate both of those? And smoking's injurious to your health, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. Great question, sir. Education, treatment, and counseling has been the way. Smoking is at an all-time low to the point where the statistics are showing that young adults are not even smoking anymore. We know they're smoking marijuana or politically correct cannabis. So it's so low, the statistic number, hence the reason why they're trying to push it through right now. Because they understand, though they will be, we talk about canned advertisement, master settlement agreement says you can't even advertise. You'll never see Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or any popular athlete advertising cigarettes. It's only point of sale where you'll see any advertisement for cigarettes at the store, right? But education, treatment, and counseling is working. American Cancer Society is doing a phenomenal job. I'm a real man, real pink, wear pink ambassador. I raised over $30,000 for breast cancer this year, right? I understand what works, and it's not making it criminalizing anything, particularly something which over 81% African Americans utilize. So the answer is education, treatment, and counseling. The only time young people see advertisement for menthol cigarettes is when the other side brings them before a town board and they bring the advertisements from the 60s and the 80s and they showing the cool menthol ban posters. Those kids are looking at those posters like, what is that? Because they never see them. You're not advertising them in your newspapers. But what they'll do is they'll bring a group of kids, stand them up with that poster. So advertisement, as far as in your newspapers, if you think how I can get money from menthol, forget it, because you can't. So education, treatment, and counseling, remember that. That's the way to cure it. This is a lab experiment, people. This side of the street, it was predominantly white. Those who do not smoke that particular brand can do all the smoking they want. So you understand, if you don't smoke menthol, you will be able to smoke your product of choice. This side of the street, which predominantly smokes menthol, which is black and Latinos, will be under the purview of police officers policing and control and unregulated cigarettes. And one thing Brother Neal didn't mention is this. The #1 importer of illegal cigarettes or untaxed cigarettes is China. You know what else they lead in bringing into the United States? Fentanyl. As Brother Neal says, I want my product to be better. Hey, they coming unregulated already.
I know we're short of time. Three issues I think that your group should be mindful of. I think Elliot makes the point as well. There are more past smokers than current smokers in the U.S. 40 million current smokers, 65 million people alive who used to smoke who stopped. absolutely education is the way. And that really is the message from a doctor to an individual to help you stop smoking. And I think that really is the point. The misnomer is the idea that the government would give an individual message to a person. They don't. Governments give public health messages. And the public health message on this issue is that all communities, especially our community, is a lot more likely to suffer with more men, blacks and browns, in jail than prison, not in their communities, not married to their wives, not working their jobs, not paying their taxes, not coaching league baseball, than trying to make this a heavy-handed approach to argue that if I'm gonna make you not smoke menthol cigarettes, A, as all my colleagues have said, you're not gonna smoke at all. That point's been made very, very clearly. Or B, we're gonna make sure that only this particular one is gonna be punished. My third and final point is this, and the point that I think is often so striking for people like me. I'm a black forensic psychiatrist. Doctors are saying these things, supporting the healthcare piece that I think Neil pointed out, and on a strictly individual perspective, it's clear if you don't smoke, you're likely to get lung cancer. Psychiatrists are not saying that. So one of the struggles in America, I think, is very often the lack of understanding of which particular doctors to listen to on this kind of type issue. Psychiatrists address issues regarding behavior and addiction, which is a very different concern than issues regarding cardiovascular and pulmonary and diabetes. So even within our organizations, I think Dr. Chaffetz made the point very clearly, even within our organizations, the American Medical Association and the National Medical, there's an internal battle by and among doctors on this issue. And Sheila Thorne shakes her head affirmatively. She knows what I'm speaking about. We're trying to educate inside the National Medical Association, and I know I'm being streamed, and the AMA on exactly these points. So what I say this as I end is this concern. If you're gonna have opportunity to have a town hall or have a media-based concern, ask about the public health implications to a whole community, not just the argument that this data would state that if one person doesn't smoke cigarettes, they won't get lung cancer. I get that piece. And secondly, ask about the fact that physicians and organizations should have a public health mantra or approach. What are the long-term downstream adverse implications to a whole community that you cannot ignore? One of my struggles has often been that when you get to that particular point and you're challenging your colleagues and your friends, they go crickets. And they don't talk about it at all. And I think that's objectionable for all of us, definitely for doctors, to act like if I can just get you to do the one thing that makes you not have a particular healthcare problem, I'm not responsible for or sensitive to all the other particular long-term implications, adverse implications to your community. That, I think, is the message for black media that I think you could actually make a very strong point in getting out. I'd love to see town halls on this issue, because I think that's the discussion that has to be discussed. So I end with public health issues have to be paramount for us to make a winning argument on this discussion. Okay.
Thank
I want
you.
to make one
Yes,
point.
Trevor.
So we don't want to leave here saying, hey, the panelists support smoking. That's not what we're saying. We're talking about the policies. We're talking about procedural justice. Is it fair? Is it right? Is it just relative to the policies? You know, politicians, whether they be mayors or governors, they're going to have a position that aligns with their audience. That's what they do. So we're in the great state of Florida, and here we have a governor who blames the economic crisis when banks were closing out west on DEI. He said, hey, the reason why these banks are failing is because they emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? This is the same governor who says, hey, Florida is where woke comes to die, right? Right here in Florida. Now, if you're talking about having a racial impact study, do you think this person will be supportive of those types of studies that deals with race when we don't want to even acknowledge that race is a construct that is real in our reality? So as we're processing, we're not here to sell you one way or the other. We're here to say, hey, let's look at what they're proposing. And we want to have a voice at the table so that when there is an impact, we've prepared ourselves for that impact.
Let's thank our panel. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. I know we went over time.
Thank you, thank you. Before we move, everybody just hold their position. Is Claudette here? I need a little housekeeping. We are to go back downstairs. Norman Rich is going to make his presentation. Although, in the interest of time, I was going to call an audible, but I may not be able to do that. I was going to see if we could just stay here, but we may not be able to do that because it takes time for people to go downstairs. So Claudette's not here to help do that. So we will, as quickly as possible, repair the downstairs. We're about 30 minutes behind schedule. But let me just emphasize, it's my understanding that this is one of the most important workshops that we can have because there are certain publishers, am I right, Norman, certain websites, there's some little things, sometimes the devil's in the details, there's some little things people aren't doing that are costing them the money that they should be getting, like the brother told us about this morning. It's just that simple. So just, and I think Norman, am I right? Am I saying that right, Norman? So these are some little details that folk need to hear. So let's go on downstairs and hear from Norman, and it won't take long, and then everybody have the evening off before we celebrate the Zipperits tonight, okay?